I can sympathize with Finn in that scenario. Finn didn't get too open with Rey until they started to get closer and closer throughout the film. Why is Han Solo the same unlikable jerk like he was in A New Hope? What movie were you watching? And were you getting popcorn at the Leia and Han Solo scene? Han Solo was probably still, to that time of the Star Wars timeline, upset and scarred about his son Ben Solo turning to the dark side. He even has dialogue saying that he goes back to what he's doing best. Watch the fucking movie! Why didn't the Resistance X-Wings shoot down the shuttle to save Rey? Gee, I don't know. Probably because the other TIE fighters were pursuing them? Ever thought of that? It was heavily defended by TIE fighters. Besides, if the shuttle goes down, Rey goes down. And dies! There's even TIE fighters shooting at hostiles while defending the shuttle. Watch the fucking movie. Like I said several times throughout this fucking video. Why is the Resistance called the Resistance? Because the Republic was only secretly supporting the Resistance. They claimed to be neutral. General Hux even said in his speech they lied to the galaxy about it, resisting the massive onslaught from the faction that rise from the ashes from the evil Empire. The Resistance was probably resisting the First Order's onslaught to kill all of the Jedi because Luke Skywalker was the last remaining Jedi. And if they kill him, that's the end of the Jedi Order. That means the First Order wins. Don't forget, it was told Kylo Ren and possibly the Knights of Ren even helped him in the process. Killed the Jedi Order that was revived by Luke.
It was a nostalgia fest.
Wrong. They didn't make the movie just to make us feel nostalgic. They could have just made it slow, flat, boring, and soulless like the prequels were. They made this movie to try to get us emotionally connected to Star Wars once again, since Star Wars was going downhill super fast with all of the over-the-top, stupid-as-shit CGI garbage being put into the original trilogy and adding in quotes and scenes that were not even broken in the first place. To quote I Hate Everything, for a movie to be good for me, you need to balance the flaws with the things you enjoy, and the points are so high with The Force Awakens that the low points are meaningless to me to think about, just like how they're meaningless to think about in the original trilogy. Here's an analogy. Okay, since all of you, for the people that are subscribed to me at least, for those that are new to my channel, Metallica is my favorite band of all time. The first 4 albums are considered masterpieces. Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Injustice for All. Just like how the first 3 Star Wars films are considered masterpieces too. Then in the 90s and 2000s, Metallica went downhill fast with their albums Load, Reload, and Saint Anger, even though I kind of enjoyed a fair amount of Load and Reload. Kind of like how I enjoyed a fair amount of Revenge of the Sith. Saint Anger is like the Attack of the Clones of Metallica, while Load and Reload is the Phantom Menace of Metallica, even though I rate those albums 6 out of 10 for Load and 7 out of 10 for Reload. Meanwhile, I rate Phantom Menace 4 out of 10. Meanwhile, the first 4 albums are the Star Wars original trilogy of Metallica. Yes, Metallica was trying out something original, not jumping on the grunge bandwagon is original anyway. Just like how copying Ridley Scott's work wasn't original to begin with either.
To seeing Gladiator and decided that he also wanted an arena in his movie, but his was gonna be bigger and better. Then I guess there was an attempt to outdo Ridley Scott even more by making a futuristic city that was much bigger and better than the one in Blade Runner. My computers are better than yours. The line between paying homage and ripping off starts to blur at this point. But the worst is yet to come when clones begin stealing things from Empire.
Those things may have expanded both of them, but it was still flat, just like how George Lucas was experimenting original things with the prequel trilogy. Metallica's albums Load and Reload and Saint Anger were proof that originality is not the be-all, end-all. Metallica expanded their discography like how the prequels expanded the universe. But the story, feel, and tone in the prequels were extremely absent and poor, just like how Metallica's feel, tone, and badassery was missing in Load, Reload, and Saint Anger, minus a few songs from those albums, especially when Load and Reload are only half-good albums. So then, after a massive downfall with those movies and albums, Metallica decided to go back to their true selves and roots. When they decided to release Death Magnetic. Just like how Disney tried to make Star Wars go back to its roots by making The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens is Death Magnetic, Saint Anger is Attack of the Clones. Again, it's not so much about the imagery, planets, ships themselves in the movies, but rather the emotional connections we have with the movie. The nostalgia was justified after Star Wars was dead to us for so many years. Just like how the nostalgia so-called formula for Death Magnetic was justified when Metallica was going downhill with their music after they released Saint Anger. Disney and J.J. Abrams wanted to remind us of what made Star Wars great in the first place, just like how Metallica wanted to remind us what made them great in the first place, too. Originality wasn't the be-all, end-all for them either. Nothing was the be-all, end-all. No originality was the be-all, end-all. Of course, Metallica's song, That Was Just Your Life, echoes Blackened, Fight Fire with Fire, and Battery as well. As well as the fact that the ballad, The Day That Never Comes, echoes Fade to Black, Welcome Home Sanitarium, One, The Unforgiven, and Nothing Else Matters. But Death Magnetic, just like The Force Awakens, is not a 100% cut and paste. They made new things and blended in with the old feel. I meant to say it blended in with the old feel. Sorry if I said new old for a sec. Metallica and Star Wars, that is. It wasn't entirely about the money for both of those. As for Metallica, they just wanted to make an album that has the same feel and tone as their prime time that found to be extremely awesome. Just like with Disney, it wasn't about the money, it was about creating a feel and tone to the saga that made people like Star Wars in the first place. Also, I strongly doubt keeping Luke out of the film 99% of the time is considered nostalgia. They could have done it far worse if Han, Leia, and Luke were the main focus of the film, with no new characters at all, which is a point I'll get to later in this video. You guys and gals asked for originality, so you got Finn, Poe, and Rey, and Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren's personality is nothing like Darth Vader. Unlike Darth Vader, Kylo Ren is struggling to stay with the dark side of the Force. He feels the pull to the light a lot in the film. As for Finn, tell me, what character in the original trilogy echoes him? As for Poe, he does not echo Leia. He's more of a skilled resistance rogue pilot than a prince and or smuggler. He's not entirely like any original character, and that's good. Stop trying to twist it around. Can we just acknowledge the fact that we have original characters, please? Stop forcing those comparisons. Just stop! Just because he had things happen to him in The Force Awakens doesn't mean his personality is exactly the same as any original trilogy character. As for Rey, she kind of reminds me a lot of Luke, but obviously she has different motivations and character to her than Luke does. They're both skilled pilots that live on a desert planet for so long, training themselves with piloting. However, difference is Rey wants to wait on Jakku for her family to come back. Luke wants to leave the desert planet and leave his old life behind to join the rebellion against the Empire. Poe is not an arrogant smuggler that only looks after himself like Han Solo in A New Hope. And of course, Poe is not a princess like Leia. Last time I checked, Leia wasn't a highly skilled pilot in A New Hope. That's Wedge Antilles and Luke Skywalker and much others in A New Hope. So, no, I can go on and on and on, but let's get to the next few points.
His lines make me cringe.
I admit, yes, his boyfriend line and him saying "I'm in charge" was odd, but did him being awkward last an entire movie like Anakin in Attack of the Clones? And Padme, for that matter? No. So that's excusable. Finn's lines, that is, because it was only 2 nitpickable lines.
Why does Poe seem happy to see Finn just seconds after, and perhaps as BB-8 tells him Finn is alive?
I don't know. Maybe Finn saved his life and completed his mission for him? I'd be sort of stoked to see the guy too. Especially if a cop rescues me from a burning building. Refer to 9/11, please, when people 15 years later meet up with the police that many years later and still love them.
Why does Kylo Ren assign just a single stormtrooper to guard Rey, the most valuable prisoner in the history of the First Order?
I can't imagine that an 18-year-old girl bolted to a chair that would need much more than one badass stormtrooper who, under his armor, is built like Daniel Craig, to keep a bead on her. Why is this even a plot hole to you?
Why is Chewbacca trying to impress single women?
Okay. Why is that a negative? You're telling me you prefer him to see him swinging like fucking Tarzan in Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith? I don't mind any of that stuff, but because the nurse is kind of giving a tone to Chewbacca like you would to an excited child. Nothing wrong with that.
Elders are not respected.
How come you don't have this bullshit mentality about Obi-Wan and Yoda in the original trilogy? If Han Solo, Leia, and Luke were the main focuses in The Force Awakens, you would hypocritically call it fan appeasement. Make up your hypocritical minds. Do you want fan appeasement or Luke, Leia, and Han to be the main focus? And you fans are probably watching this hate fan appeasement, so what's the fucking difference? If we didn't focus enough on the new characters, Rey, Poe, and Finn, and Kylo Ren, The Force Awakens would be far more inconsistent than you would claim it to be. The Elders are passing down the torch to a new generation. Luke Skywalker was still a main focus in the film despite being absent throughout the movie. Realize that, you dipshits. If you guys hate pandering nostalgia, then why did you all want them to be the main focus of the film? You people are such a fucking joke.
Only 2 TIE fighters went up to the Millennium Falcon. What the fuck?
Last time I checked, there was not a single TIE fighter going after Luke, R2-D2, C-3PO, Han Solo, Obi-Wan, and Chewbacca on Tatooine to capture back the plans in A New Hope. Why is this a big fuss to you?
Luke had no lines.
What? That's seriously an argument? Hang on. If Luke spoke at the end, it would ruin the incredibly powerful scene. Just look at the sunset from A New Hope. He didn't speak a single word from that scene. If he spoke in both this scene and this scene, it would be like a jackass spitting and shitting on a beautifully made cake. No words were needed. We saw the pain and facial expression in his eyes in The Force Awakens. We are not stupid. Well, except for you, The Force Awakens haters.
The orange Yoda.
So apparently whoever's old is apparently a Yoda ripoff. Last time I checked, other than her height, she looks nothing like Yoda. Her face is nothing like Yoda. Her species doesn't even match Yoda's either. Again, another pointless complaint that doesn't stop me from liking the movie.
Why is the child of Han and Leia named Ben Solo?
Who the fucking hell cares? Is that worth nitpicking over? No. Leia could have named Kylo Ren that name anyway. It was her, not Han Solo, cousin A New Hope. Leia was the one looking up to Obi-Wan Kenobi, aka Ben Kenobi, as her only hope. Rewatch the fucking movies, you dipshits. Not Han Solo. Therefore, that's why the name Ben Solo is justified. Or maybe Luke suggested Leia that name anyway. We don't know the story in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, at least not entirely. Either way, it doesn't even fucking matter. It doesn't bother me, as it's only a pointless nitpick by dipshits.
Poe expected Finn to complete his mission.
First off, Finn was not originally trying to complete Poe's mission. Second, he was trying to find shelter, let alone escape from the First Order. When the First Order started encountering Rey and Finn, that's when Finn quickly took action and tried to help Rey escape, since he even mentions later nobody knows the First Order like he does. Again, not something to nitpick over.
How did Maz Kanata know that it was Luke and Anakin's lightsaber?
Did you not hear that Maz is friends with Han Solo? And Han Solo is clearly friends with Maz. It's a massive chance Han Solo told Maz Kanata.
First Order and Resistance are boring names.
Then you must not like the Resistance from the first two Terminator movies. And apparently you find Second Reich and Third Reich boring names too. What kind of a stupid argument is this?
Kylo Ren kills Old Man when he could have used the Force to find out where the map is. Why do you think killing Lor San Tekka
Would give him any information. You mean like how Darth Vader choked Captain Antilles to death on the Tantive 4? You mean... Or, let me try that again. You mean like the time Darth Vader choked Captain Antilles to death because he thought he was going to get information out of that too? Yeah, totally absurd. Way to ignore facts.
Only Jedi should wield the lightsaber.
So you're now saying Luke should not have used the lightsaber in Empire Strikes Back? Because he wasn't a Jedi at the time. Darth even said so. Don't say J.J. Abrams ruined lightsabers when George Lucas already made lightsabers so goddamn boring in the prequels. Did you not see the prequels that were already made? Watch General Grievous and versus Obi-Wan. That tells you how lightsabers became boring.
Starkiller Base is Hoth 2.0.
Well, let me put it this way. If Starkiller Base had a forest terrain, the complaints would be about Endor. If Starkiller Base had a swamp terrain, the complaints would be about Dagobah. If the Starkiller Base had clouds and cities on it, the complaints would be about Bespin. If the Starkiller Base was a lava planet with volcanoes, the complaints would be about Mustafar. Why complain anyway if you're gonna lose no matter what? It's a pointless debate. While yes, a planet-killing machine nowadays is lazy writing, complaining that Hoth 2.0 is dumb as piss. It's like saying Jupiter is Saturn 2.0. It does not fucking count as an argument. Kate, thanks.
The fact that 30 years after the war against the Empire was won later, the First Order came to life made Return of the Jedi pointless. All the destruction, all the sacrifice, all the fighting was all for nothing.
You uninformed twit. Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, but the ending to the Galactic Empire didn't 100% stop all the remaining imperialists. Stories don't just stop at the end. The end. You can still be happy in this ending and be ready for the next life's adventure. World War I happened, people celebrated and lived happy lives, and then World War II happened, etc., etc. It goes on forever. There's an endless amount of stories to tell in the Star Wars universe. I'm happy they chose to revamp the Star Wars universe. Maybe it does feel a little close to the original trilogy in terms of atmosphere and imagery, but the new generation gets to experience what you got all those summers ago. Anybody with a brain knows that Star Wars logic can apply to real life too. You do realize in the Star Wars universe, the remaining Imperial fleet, Imperial officers, and stormtroopers that wasn't in the Battle of Endor is partially responsible for the rise of the First Order pre-Episode 7, right? This is just like World War I. Everyone in 1918 celebrated the war being completely over, then 21 years later, a worse war happened in 1939, thanks to Nazi Germany. The origins of the First Order in Star Wars is basically like Nazi Germany. General Hux's speech, anyone? The Empire/First Order may not have had control of the galaxy during 5 ABY to 34 ABY, the years in Star Wars, by the way, but that doesn't automatically mean they were not threats. Think again. Well, to be fair, nobody knew what would happen after World War I, so any of that could be plausible with just the slightest shift in history. Think about why Germany became a Nazi empire. It could honestly directly parallel why the First Order rose from the ashes of the Empire. After Episode 6, the Rebels won. But that doesn't mean the whole galaxy was supportive of the Rebel Force, let alone the New Republic. Some people may have grown up under the Empire rule, thus the First Order being established. Also, we don't even know who or what Snoke is yet, which could be a huge clue to what the First Order came from. Disney wanted a more traditional Star Wars feel, even if it's not too original. It's better than another shitty prequel trilogy or another special edition original trilogy, but that's nothing to be mad about. We needed this movie, as fans, because it's the first great movie we've had since Return of the Jedi in the 80s. The Force Awakens was the smartest movie anybody could ever possibly make. And it opens up more originality in The Last Jedi and Episode 9. Now that this movie has reused the original trilogy's assets. Also, Snoke's existence doesn't make Return of the Jedi pointless either. When Vader killed the Emperor, that was to save his son, to put family before power. The Sith indeed was destroyed, which is why Snoke is not even a Sith. Understand it, it's a big galaxy. Just because someone is a Force-sensitive user doesn't make them a Jedi nor Sith. Oh, for the record, by the way, balance to the Force doesn't mean destruction of the dark side. It means balance of both light and dark. It becomes even dumber when the same fanboys that bitch about the old EU being thrown in the dump, despite the fact that all the EU material after Jedi showed the Galactic Empire still continued on without the Empire and Emperor, and seemed to continue having dozens of troops and ships at their complete disposal to use to continue to fight the New Republic. With the Emperor himself coming back to life, saying that death was merely an inconvenience for him, as he had a shit ton of clone bodies he could transfer his spirit into if needed. So when The Force Awakens shows a reformed Empire, it's horrible, it's terrible, and completely destroys Luke and his friends fought for it in Episode 6. But when the expanded universe did it, which was literally the same government seen in the original films, with numerous leaders stepping in from Thrawn to Admiral Dala to take control without the Emperor, the head of the monarchy and founder of the Empire, it's apparently okay? Where the fuck are your standards, you idiots? Make up your fucking minds.
Expanded universes mean better movies.
Oh, like Dexter's Restaurant? The god-awful looking CGI? The two-dimensional whiny brat Anakin that ruins Obi-Wan's lines in A New Hope, let alone Darth Vader's past? Jar Jar Binks? Politics no one gives a flying fuck about in a kid's movie? Anakin playing a game of Donkey Kong? C-3PO being toyed around by a thing? Jar Jar Binks smelling a fart? Stupid shit about space taxations that make no fucking logic? Uninteresting, boring, and unrelatable characters that seem dead inside? A villain that wasn't written? Again, as much as I like and appreciate new things, originality is not the goddamn fucking be-all, end-all. Every time I try to rewatch the prequels, I feel like I'm losing sleep. But with The Force Awakens, I let out one big massive fuck yeah! Every time I watch it. It's super enjoyable. If we can excuse the flaws in A New Hope, then we can excuse the flaws in The Force Awakens. I appreciate George Lucas tried to bring cool and new things to the table in the prequel trilogy, but he failed horribly at connecting with the audience, telling a good and consistent story. I don't hate George Lucas at all, by the way. I don't care if the prequels expanded the universe. That does not make me forgive the boringness and awfulness of the prequels. Never will. If it's not consistent and or fun to watch, then I'm not gonna like it. Simple as that. I put consistency with story and characters and fun added to it over originality. Get it in your heads. I even said in my reviews of the prequels that the planets, starfighters, and space stations look cool. Did it have any substance? For the most part, no, they really didn't.
Where's Finn's moral compass? He says it's the right thing to help people and wrong to kill, but then kill stormtroopers and First Order officers.
He was using violence as a last resort. Also, refer to him saying, "You don't know the First Order like I do. They'll slaughter us." Refer to him saying that quote later on in the film. He was trying to help Poe not get killed or tortured. Killing stormtroopers who kill innocent people, mind you. Remember the keyword, innocent, is what was being used as a last resort. He was trying to help and protect Poe from evil. He didn't need a reason to help anyone. In fact, in real life, you don't need a reason to help anyone at all. As mentioned earlier in the film, Finn was sanitation. Maybe the First Order officers were massive assholes to him, and they probably showed him and stormtroopers video tutorials of what they will do in combat, and a video of them killing innocent people were probably shown, and Finn probably felt disgusted and bad for those people. But then again, this is just me thinking out loud. Stormtroopers did a lot of immoral acts in Finn's eyes, while Poe, on the other hand, well, to be fair, he only killed Finn's best friend, but Finn didn't even know that came from Poe. The village was so dimly lit, Finn didn't see everyone, other than his best friend, getting killed and bleeding out. Finn's moral compass is only use violence towards people that cause tyranny towards the innocent and vulnerable. He saw the stormtroopers themselves kill helpless villagers, and he made a choice and didn't do it. He didn't kill for those fascist little arrogant shits. I'll admit, I wish it was explored more, but this flaw is highly excusable if you think about it. If you guys think about it, like he said in the film, meaning he's seen and heard about the brutality the First Order has done in the past. It's possible stormtroopers around him even talk about how much they take joy in taking innocent lives and murdering people in cold blood, and that probably disgusted Finn at that time. But as for Poe, what did Finn know about Poe other than just a helpless hostage that would be a victim of the First Order's brutality. You tell me, Finn chose to help the hostage as well and not shoot at innocent lives on Jakku. Slip, aka his friend that died, probably was his only friend in the First Order. He especially defected when he sees that there's nothing left for him in the First Order. But I'm thinking out loud a lot. However, a lot of this is still highly excusable.
How did they get the funds for the Starkiller base?
You do realize you can still be powerful after a massive defeat, right? Once again, look at Nazi Germany from the 1930s and 1940s after World War I. You should think about the real life before cherry-picking science fiction. The Americans technically were still the rebels and the resistance in World War II, as well as the British. The Americans lost Pearl Harbor but won the war. The point is, just because an Axis power suffers a defeat doesn't make them gone forever. In World War I, the Allied powers didn't stop Hitler from rising to power in 1933, just like how the rebels, or the New Republic's victory against the Galactic Empire, didn't stop Snoke's rise to power in the Second Galactic Civil War. Star Wars is technically, as Mr. Plinkett analyzed, is World War II or World War I in space. Almost anything that happened in the Star Wars universe can be applied to real life too. Another real life example is Osama bin Laden. Did that stop ISIS or Al Qaeda from going on rampages? Of course not.
When the Resistance finally figure out where Luke is, after looking for him for so many years, why did they send only Chewbacca and a random girl who Leia just met to collect him?
Let's just get this straight for a second. It's not said aloud in the movie, but it's pretty obvious that Han, Leia, and probably Luke know exactly who Rey is. There's a connection there, a mysterious one that we are now dying to uncover. Sometimes when you write a movie, there are things that happen between scenes that never see the page. Was there a message from Luke and R2? Possibly. Had Leia been left with instructions for what to do if Rey ever showed up? Possibly. Again, this is all for the sequels and the eventual reveal of who Rey is.
J.J. Abrams doesn't know how solar systems work. Those planets are too close to each other.
Ever heard of the TRAPPIST system that was recently discovered by NASA? Clearly you don't know how solar systems work, buddy. I thought the other so-called planets were habitable moons. I mean, Endor is a habitable moon too. What would be the difference with those four moons or planets that were destroyed by the Starkiller base? The First Order was proving a point that they can't just destroy a single planet, but a whole star system rather than just one planet, like the Death Star from A New Hope. The First Order doesn't need a justification to destroy the other four planets, just like how Nazi Germany didn't need a justification to invade Poland. The other four planets, or moons, whatever, were probably also occupied by the Republic and its fleet in the surface. Come on, guys, you're all making this too easy for me to debunk.
The Starkiller base sucking up the entire star until it's gone? That would take years to finish.
Well, for one, the sun is not the same size as the sun we have. It's not even as big as Jupiter, as seen in this scene right here. So I screenshot that and made a size comparison. That is a wicked tiny star compared to a lot of stars, so no. It would not take years. Think again, it depends on what size of the sun it is. If it was the size of our sun, then yes, it would take years. But since this sun is far smaller, then no. It would not take years at all. How could an entire sun fit inside the Starkiller base? I don't know. How much shit can fit inside you when you get diarrhea? Because you are full of shit. How could Finn stand a chance against Kylo Ren with a lightsaber? Answer is, he doesn't really stand that much of a chance. He got his spine slashed by Kylo Ren, and he got his ass kicked by the traitor, TR-8R by the way. He looked really awkward with the lightsaber, so that's proof that he was not trained enough to even be qualified to use the lightsaber. Only stuff he did was kill a stormtrooper with it, and only did one jab to Kylo Ren. That's it. He wasn't destined to be an indestructible god or some space Jesus, like Anakin was in the prequels. At least the lightsaber fight between Kylo Ren and Finn wasn't over choreographed like it was in like all the other lightsaber fights in the prequels. If it was, then this movie would have been far worse than everyone would have made it out to be, or more than they already are making it out to be right now. It actually makes this lightsaber fight more realistic if you think about it. His awkwardness as wielding the lightsaber even says it all. He's not a force-sensitive user. Simple as that. You do realize that all of the year Finn was being trained during simulators and shit in the First Order, he still could have trained himself using that melee weapon that the TR-8R or traitor was using, right? It's not like he ever won the fight.
The Force Awakens is the worst movie of all time.
Bullshit. And this is not coming from a biased lover and nostalgic feel for The Force Awakens. If you seriously think it's the worst movie ever, then I strongly doubt you watched anything outside of Star Wars. Have you not heard of Battlefield Earth? Or Batman and Robin? Or Freebird? Or fucking Transformers Revenge of the Fallen? You're seriously gonna make a superlative statement and force feed it down our fucking throats and call us not true fans just because we like it unlike you? If it sucks because it borrowed from A New Hope, then use the same damn logic against A New Hope and say it sucks because it borrowed from Flash Gordon, samurai movies, The Hidden Fortress, Dune, and even World War II movies. And don't even think about using that Flash Gordon is Flash Gordon, Star Wars is Star Wars excuse to rationalize and justify your whiny, blind hatred towards Disney. I'm not buying it for a fraction of a second.
Kylo Ren getting injured from Chewbacca's crossbow should not have weakened him.
Okay, then get hit by a gun in the waist or got below your rib, then tell me if you win the sword fight or not. Also, if it were really a scene that was just one of those scenes where it was just there, I don't think Kylo Ren would have beaten on his wound where Chewbacca shot him. It wasn't a cardboard cutout sequence at all. There was a reason it was there. As I recall, Kylo Ren had plenty of stab and laser bullet shot injuries. Meanwhile, Rey had none. And bullet injuries and stab injuries are much worse than getting the air knocked out of you, which happened to Rey when she was pushed into a tree. Also, Chewbacca didn't even hit Kylo Ren where it would instantly kill him, unlike all the other kills he had earlier. That's just a weak spot to hit Kylo Ren. At least a strong spot for Kylo Ren to survive a laser bullet to him. Also, the only time Chewbacca's blaster gets a big result in terms of impact on enemies, it's when it's effective at close range. Compared to all the other times he fired the crossbow, it was a long-range shot when he shot Kylo Ren. Here's a link to the description below explaining it all. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Most of you people don't know how blasters work in Star Wars. And then there's the Flack, where apparently Maz Kanata exposed the Falcon crew to the First Order sympathizers in her bar. Yeah? I get it's a stupid thing to happen, but how is Maz Kanata supposed to know? Where in the movie just showed that she supports both sides from the Resistance to First Order. Also, if we can excuse the stupid stormtrooper moment right here.
We don't need to see his identification.
Well, that was easy.
Door's locked. Move on to the next one.
You're telling me that despite the fact you're part of the largest military force in the galaxy, you don't have the means to open a simple locked door? This guy gets shot, but it's this guy that falls down. They look funny when they fall over.
It's them. Blast them.
What did you outnumbered them 8-4? Why are you running away?
Hey!
Oh, come on, that's the oldest trick in the book.
Don't move.
What the hell are you doing? Just shoot them. Oh, come on, there was hundreds of you in there. How did none of you hit him?
Take over. Close the blast doors. Open the blast doors.
Need I say more?
To help, and we can excuse this shit as well. Not to mention, if you look back at the Cantina Mos Eisley moment, R2-D2 and C-3PO were put outside because, you know, the waiter said, "We don't serve their kind here." Luke or Obi-Wan or one of those two could have waited and guarded by those droids while the other hires Han Solo to get him off the planet. Considering they just went past the stormtroopers before entering the cantina.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
What?
Your droids, they'll have to wait outside. We don't want them here.
Let's way out by the speeder. We don't want any trouble.
I heartily agree with you, sir.
Don't you think one of them should have guarded by those droids to make sure they were not acquired by the Empire? Why can't anyone bring these facts up? Oh, right, because everyone thinks that everything that it happens to be in the 70s or 80s or 90s or anything in the 20th century is all 100% perfect with no flaws whatsoever, which is bullshit and hypocritical. Maz Kanata did not even fucking know about the droid carrying the map to Luke Skywalker either. Even if this is the case, that Maz knew there were First Order sympathizers in her castle, how would she know about the map anyways? Besides, it at the same time showed Maz helped the Resistance since there was this robot and or droid to tell them to alert the Resistance and get to the droid that has the map to Luke Skywalker. And what's with the flack about the microphone as his fucking face? Or on his face, rather. What's wrong with that? I'm all for 50s vocals like that. I love them. And as I recall, Empire Strikes Back at the end had a droid like that. So why the double standards, dipshits? Looking at you, Pawn Story Games. Yeah, I know you bitched about the droid having a 50s microphone as on his fucking face. But yeah, you never brought up the droid from Empire Strikes Back. Where are your fucking standards, you dipshits?
The practical effects were poorly used and all used for nostalgia.
I'd much rather have practical effects than have characters be surrounded by a fucking green or blue screen throughout the entire movie. When you surround them by a blue or green screen, none of them are gonna know or even give a fuck about what they're looking at. For example, Obi-Wan confronting General Grievous. As Mr. Plinkett said in his review, he was more than likely just looking at a blue screen and was told that General Grievous was there. And when General Grievous was swinging his lightsabers, he didn't even slightly react or flinch. That's a prime example of poor usage of CGI and a blue screen. It sucks out the humanity and emotions in people, and I just get bored with it really fast. The Force Awakens, on the other hand, a lot of characters reacted and flinched to the practical effects used. The officer talking to Kylo Ren even had a flinch reaction to Kylo Ren smashing a control panel. The practical effects made the movie feel real. I felt like I was in the movie while watching it. Nothing felt like a video game. CGI was used sparingly. CGI is like candy, cake, cookies, once again. It's great to have them as a treat, but when you overdo it to death, you'll get diabetes and not want any more appreciate it ever again. I'm strongly aware plenty of practical effects were used in the prequels, but the characters were surrounded by a blue screen or green screen 24/7. That's why I tended to compliment the cool-looking starfighters, pod racing and shit, but that's not really saying much, considering, like I said earlier, since the prequels had plenty of practical effects, and which happened to be the starfighters and pod racing and sets. But at the same time, the worst CGI usage was definitely making Yoda into a video game character, aka CGI, as well as the goddamn clones. If you CGI every damn character and or clone trooper, I don't get invested and or lost in the film. I prefer real stormtroopers with real costumes over cartoon clones. I prefer a puppet Yoda over a video game Yoda. CGI does have creative uses, but the directors and producers should know how to use it appropriately and not cartoonish. J.J. Abrams wanted The Force Awakens to feel real and great, and he clearly succeeded in doing so. CGI was used sparingly. That's when I 100% forgive CGI. I'm not anti-CGI. I'd otherwise be anti-movie. But like I said, there's a difference between using it sparingly and using it to the point where it looks like a cartoon and video game. It doesn't connect it with the audience. It just becomes not mind-numbing. It's really difficult to act when there's nothing there around you. That's why by endless light years prefer practical effects over massive amounts of green and blue screen time. Well, except for the Rathtar scene, because using puppets for that would have been kind of a disaster if you ask me. That's the only time I think the CGI was warranted. Or one of the only times CGI was warranted. The other time CGI wasn't warranted in The Force Awakens was Snoke. He sat in the chair the entire movie, yet was CGI. Like, what? And oh boy, here's the next flack I gotta debunk, or point I gotta debunk. And it's one of the grand doozies of everyone that everyone repeats, rehashes, and highlights, that every fucking person that hates The Force Awakens says so much is a giant cliche, even a bigger. It's real, son of New Hope. First, let me debunk of what Wonder Watch said in her so-called death video. Flash Gordon is fast Gordon, Star Wars is Star Wars. Excuses much, you little shit? I can use the same excuse saying that A New Hope is a fucking New Hope, and The Force Awakens is the fucking Force Awakens. If you can't tolerate that, leave the fandom and save me the huge headache. Okay? And as for you TFA hating pricks, cut the shit with the true fan card. If you're really a true fan, you would respect someone's taste of movies. You don't see me calling someone not a true fan of Star Wars for liking the prequels. And if you morons can accept the fact that the fucking awful movie known as Skyline is a ripoff of Independence Day or War of the Worlds, District 9 and Starship Troopers, then you can accept the fact that Star Wars A New Hope borrowed a huge ton from Flash Gordon, Samurai movies, The Hidden Fortress, Dune, and several others. If you can accept Flash Gordon is Flash Gordon and Star Wars is Star Wars, then use the same fucking logic and accept that Metal Man is Metal Man, aka a ripoff of Iron Man, and that Iron Man is Iron Man. Use that same dumbass logic. Originality, like I said earlier, is never the be-all, end-all. Well, in many cases it can be, but then again, originality wasn't the big goal for The Force Awakens, as Star Wars was rapidly going downhill after the garbage prequel trilogy and the special edition nonsense that George Lucas put out. No disrespect to George Lucas, but what he did to Star Wars was absolute blasphemy. Also, idiot TFA haters, what's your definition of originality? Fucking Battlefield Earth? Transformers Revenge of the Fallen? Because those are originals and those are the worst movies of all time. If the story and plot is convoluted, poorly executed, lacks emotion, lacks relatable and fun characters, then I will not forgive its so-called creativity for a goddamn second. So all of your excuses, all of your dogshit excuses, and if you're a hater of The Force Awakens or Disney watching this, all of your excuses and the rest of the Force Awakens or Rogue One or Disney hating morons' excuses can fucking die in an explosive death. Die in a fucking abyss, deep, dark abyss where all those excuses will never be thought of again. Jesus Christ, you guys are dipshits. Also, the Galactic Empire is practically the German Empire in space when it comes to historical wars, like World War I, World War II, and the First Order, in my analogy, is Nazi Germany in space. In World War II movies, you can even hear pilots say stuff like Red Leader or Gold Leader and shit like that, just like it was in Star Wars. As Mr. Plinkett said in his review of The Force Awakens, it's World War II in space. I go to see a fun, exciting, entertaining, and consistent movie with its storyline. I watch movies to have fun, be excited, be entertained, and be engaged with its consistent storyline. Not a movie with the most originality in the world. Wake up! And by the way, what do you mean we were raised by single mothers? Wonder what? My parents never divorced. And in the meantime, learn the fucking differences between rehashes, similarities, and parallels. The Force Awakens is similar to A New Hope. Also, here are some differences between The Force Awakens and A New Hope. Lightsaber crossguard is a groundbreaking idea. Planet with a built-in superweapon, as opposed to it being an entire space station. Yes, I know it's another Death Star, and I still wish it was something different, but at least it was creative by having a planet have a built-in super weapon instead. Starkiller Base can destroy 5 planets and or moons at once. People are shown on the planet as they were about to get blown up. Alderaan never had that in A New Hope. Graveyard of giant ships and destroyed starfighters after the Battle of Jakku. Stormtrooper training, what the fuck am I saying? Stormtrooper turning to the light side because it's the right thing to do. Stealing a bad guy's starfighter to escape the Star Destroyer. In Episode 4, it was about destroying the Death Star and rescuing the princess. Episode 7 was about finding Luke, the Last Jedi. A Nazi-like speech. Jedi temples. The original trilogy never showed that, except for Return of the Jedi's special edition ending. Aerosol taking place on the surface of a planet, at least with the X-Wings and TIE Fighters, because the Battle of Hoth was aerial with its snow speeders. TR-8R, or Traitor. Need I say more? Chrome Stormtrooper, even though she didn't do shit the entire film. Using the Force to stop a laser bullet in mid-air or hold people in place. Rey wants to stay on the desert planet to see if her family comes back. She's remaining a status quo, unlike Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. And Luke, in A New Hope, wants to leave the desert planet to seek new life and destiny. Wants to join the rebellion and defeat the Empire. Female as the number one focus of the film. Stormtrooper transport ship. Rey has a horrifying vision, unlike Luke. Flamethrower used by stormtroopers. We never saw that in the original trilogy, did we? Using the Force as a torture method. Rey finding Luke lonely on an ocean planet and gives the old lightsaber to him. Soccer ball like a droid. I could probably go on and on, but go watch Cinema Wins. You people shouldn't even have me recapping all this stuff. If your definition of originality is overwhelming us with bullshit politics and no war whatsoever, then your originality should not be taken seriously. Walking and talking, sitting on couches, and talking about boring shit should not be in Star Wars. What matters is the war fucking exists. We should only have that kind of political shit in books, not movies. It's not Star Trek. Not Star Trek at all. And nothing against Star Trek, by the way. I like Star Trek myself. Not a huge fan, but I do like it. I just want Star Wars to stay true to itself. Who fucking cares about those political debates and all the political horse shit? The original trilogy kept it nice and simple at the intro of A New Hope. Want to know what comes to my mind when I think of Star Wars? War zones, blasters, laser bullets, starfighters, and spaceships, space stations. Fun characters, the Force. Frantic pacing. Exploring planets. New planets, no less, even though there weren't necessarily new terrains in The Force Awakens, but meh, I don't really care. No politics and no childlike characters like Jar Jar. That's not Star Wars. If the Phantom Menace was really supposed to be more grown up, then why fucking put a character as fucking dipshitted as Jar Jar Binks in the fucking movie? And it's not just Jar Jar, by the way. Every single funny character ever that was pretty much encountering Jar Jar Binks on Tatooine, that was there for trying to make us laugh. Especially the pod racing droids. God damn. What were you thinking, George Lucas? Since when do kids get entertained by political bullshit anyway? If you're just gonna try to make it a kids movie, then by that logic, kids must be really entertained with political drama and other bullshit like that. Those two things do not go together. Tell me, when's the last time you saw kids reenacting this stupid shit and not careable politics in Star Wars? I don't think careable is a word, but whatever. There's several Star Wars fans that don't give a flying rat's ass about politics, and I'm definitely one of them. Keep them the fuck out. Can you imagine if that was shit it was in the Terminator franchise? You would all call it boring, so why excuse it in Star Wars? Anyways, back to the topic of how originality obviously isn't the be-all, end-all, and all the so-called original characters in the prequels were poorly, if not even written at all. The Force Awakens borrowing from A New Hope after getting a shitty trilogy and stupid fucking special editions to the original trilogy is mostly justified. I'm glad Disney took the reviews from Mr. Plinkett seriously. J.J. Abrams is fucking awesome for that. Also, I'm just going to put in the description of how, minute by minute, The Force Awakens is not entirely a remake of The New Hope. Well, actually, I don't know how much I'm going to edit this video, so yeah. It's similar a lot, but not a remake. There's a big difference between shamelessly ripping off someone, and having similarities. Also, I strongly suggest you watch Chris Stuckman's formula analysis video. I'll put that link into the description below as well. Also, I want to recommend the awful rip-off films to you guys known as Metal Man, Atlantic Rim, Transmorphers, and partially Skyline as a learning experience. Maybe then you'll know what plagiarism really is as opposed to what you actually think it is. Thinking even the least nitpickable similarities automatically means rip-off. A New Hope similarities is not a negative. The Force Awakens borrowing from A New Hope doesn't stop me from enjoying the film. The Force Awakens has a completely different stories with different characters having different motivations while having the same structure and layout as A New Hope did. The movie known as The Force Awakens doesn't rely on destroying the Death Star like it did in A New Hope. It also didn't rely heavily on trying to rescue a princess either. The mission of A New Hope: save the princess, destroy the Death Star. The Force Awakens: find Luke and push back the bad guys taking the advantage. It was a smart move by Disney. And it wasn't a bad movie by any means, because it still has amazing differences that make it stand out, as mentioned earlier. If Star Wars focused too much on originality, then they may be like Battlefield Earth as the result. It's impossible to literally be the most original movie in the world. Originality doesn't always mean good. They should focus on being a good movie rather than the most original movie in the world. And J.J. Abrams succeeded in that. He knew what the fans wanted. You should focus on being good rather than original. Again, massive difference between a rip-off and being similar. And let me address some hypocrisy. The Lion King in 1994 is one of the most praised, if not the best, Disney animated film of all time. But somehow, to you people, them ripping off Kimba the White Lion is excusable. Hypocritical much? If you can excuse The Lion King from borrowing from Kimba the White Lion, then you can excuse The Force Awakens borrowing from A New Hope. But The Lion King is The Lion King. Kimba is Kimba. Star Wars is Star Wars. Then use the same dumbass logic about The Force Awakens being The Force Awakens, like I said earlier, you dipshit. Where is your intelligence? But when I repeat myself, that's when you fucking dumb fucks don't listen, because you're too muddled in your own narrow-minded thinking. If you get it, don't just say that to avoid logical thinking. Commit it to memory and shut the fuck up about how films are remakes. Why blindly ignore the fact that one of the best Disney films ripped off characters, in some case plot points from Kimba the White Lion, then blindly bash The Force Awakens being somewhat similar to that scenario? What the fuck is up with your bullshit standards? The Lion King being the best animated film of all time even proves that movies don't have to be original. So don't pull the movies need to be original or else they'll suck card out of your ass. Might as well defend a god-awful film known as Birdemic, since that's original too. Also, here's one more thing I'd like to clear up before I get finished with this topic about how it's a ever so remake of A New Hope. It's called The Hero's Journey when it comes to the main characters. And it's as old as the storytelling itself. Look it up, because I hate to break it to you kids, but Empire Strikes Back was not an original plot, nor was A New Hope. Somehow, y'all have forgotten that all of Star Wars movies deal with echoes of the past. A New Hope was about an ordinary guy on a desert planet. The Phantom Menace, ordinary kid on a desert planet. The Force Awakens, ordinary girl on a desert planet. It's not that hard to fucking figure out. Alright. Destroyed this Flack. Now onto one of the bigger grandoozies of them all.
Rey is a Mary Sue.
I do find it interesting that no one seems to question how a 9-year-old boy can basically be a Formula 1 driver, build a complex protocol droid, and later fly a craft inside a giant control ship, knocking out its core miraculously after crash landing inside the damn thing, yet criticize Rey's character for being a good pilot or mechanic and saber duelist. Considering she built her own giant land speeder, which is a vehicle just like how ships are vehicles, are salvages ships for a living. I think she's not a Mary Sue. Actually, let me rephrase that. I don't think she's not a Mary Sue. I know she's not a Mary Sue. You're right that the Force wouldn't be able to grant expertise or knowledge. At best, maybe an intuition or whatever. You know what does grant knowledge at flying spaceships? Building them, scrapping them, and collecting them, and selling them, and messing around with parts from an entire battle's worth of spaceships. Or, I don't know, I had a slip of the tongue there, my bad. In trial and error in the Falcon, she nearly crashes the damn thing on takeoff. She also even said herself she's flown some ships but never left the planet. Note! She mentioned the quantity of spaceships, not quantity of time. The film dropped hints like crazy of how Rey is not a Mary Sue. When it comes to piloting, she even handles the Falcon very poorly. Now, let's count all the struggles Rey had in The Force Awakens, shall we?
Don't follow me. Town is that way. No! In the morning you go. You're welcome.
You need a teacher! I could show you the ways of the Force!
Use the Force, Luke. Let go.
The Force is strong, isn't it?
Luke, trust me.
quad jumper!
Hey! We need a pilot!
We've got one!
You! What about that ship?
That one's garbage! Gunner position is down there!
You ever fly this thing?
No! This ship hasn't flown in years!
Hey! That's mine! I got a bad feeling about this.
Oh no.
On a what?
Wrong fuses.
Kill them! And take the droid!
Dear child, I see your eyes. You already know the truth. The belonging you seek is not behind you. It is ahead. I am no Jedi, but I know the Force. It moves through and surrounds every living thing. Close your eyes.
And there you have it. She scavenged ship parts from fallen starships and battle cruisers for a living. How does that scream Mary Sue? Also, call the staff what you like, but it's still a long stick with the same fucking, or almost the same fucking width as the lightsaber. Especially the double-sided lightsaber. They're both melee weapons. Understand it. She was using the staff a decade and a half on Jakku. Her whole life, she learned to survive against many things, even thugs, as shown in the film. You would know that if you had a goddamn brain and actually were watching the film instead of looking at porn sites on your phone while you're in the theater. She even poses towards Finn as if she was about to jab Finn with her staff, just like how she was jabbing at Kylo Ren, or at least trying to stab and jab Kylo Ren. She beat up thugs thanks to the help with the staff too, like I already mentioned. Don't even give me the whole staff and lightsaber are two completely different things excuse. At least her duel against Kylo Ren wasn't over choreographed like the prequels. Maybe if she was fucking dancing during her duel against Kylo Ren, then maybe that would scream Mary Sue. But that isn't the case here, ladies and gentlemen. She even said this. When she won the fight, Kylo Ren had injuries to him. Compare all of that to Darth Vader's duel in the original trilogy. Darth Vader had no shots or stabs prior to the duels he had in the original trilogy. Sure, Luke hit Darth Vader's shoulder with his lightsaber in Empire Strikes Back, but Darth Vader was wearing armor. He reduced the deep impact on him. Without the armor, it would have been a deep cut. So yes, the injury to Kylo Ren is highly justified. I already said this earlier. Kylo Ren didn't want to kill Rey. That was not his mission. Refer to what Snoke said to Kylo Ren about her, and what I said earlier in the video.
Supreme Leader, I can get the map from the girl. I just need your guidance.
If what you say about this girl is true, bring her to me.
Also, with Rey resisting Kylo Ren thanks to the Force, Rey using the mind trick on a stormtrooper thanks to the Force, why is it that no one whines about Luke Skywalker miraculously launching the torpedoes into the Death Star thanks to the Force? Given the fact that he has no idea how to wield the Force, he just learned about the Force in the film and he miraculously blew up the Death Star. Given the fact that he also just learned about the Force in A New Hope, unlike Rey, who always knew about it. Before tapping into it, at least, because she didn't know if it were true or not. But that doesn't mean that she had certain powers that on Jakku, but didn't know of it being the Force at the time. She just didn't know if the Jedi or Luke Skywalker were real or not. Or the fact that Anakin from Episode 1 also miraculously blew up a space station controlling the droids. You're gonna tell me that doesn't scream Gary Sue to you? He crash landed the damn starship in the droid control ship and then miraculously blew up the droid control ship. Was there any evidence given in The Phantom Menace that he flew in space before? I mean, sure, he pilots the pod racing, but starships? But anyway, forget it, let's move on. Rey using the mind trick and resisting Kylo Ren is nothing compared to what Luke and Anakin did in the first films to those previous two trilogies. Not to mention if both was their first time piloting in space. They're pilots, but since when did they pilot military starfighters? And Luke Skywalker broke Darth Vader's TIE lock-on and blew up the Death Star with the Force in an X-Wing he never flown in before. Even I do acknowledge the fact that he flew his T-16 on Tatooine, but that was very low to the ground on Baker's Canyon. That was nothing like high altitudes in space! The fact of the matter is, did Rey have failures, struggles, emotional conflicts, and things she wasn't able to accomplish her first times? Yes or no? Well, the answer is yes. That disqualifies her of being a Mary Sue. And by the way, when I compare Rey to Anakin and Luke, I'm not saying Luke and Anakin are Gary Sues themselves, but let's not lie and say that Rey does not in any way, shape, or form resemble of what Luke and Anakin miraculously, or supposedly miraculously, did in their first movies of the previous two trilogies.
But Rey thought Luke was just a myth. How could she be strong with the Force?
Correction, she thought Luke was a myth. She said nothing about the Force. Also, with the galaxy at war 30 years prior to the events of The Force Awakens, you should know that almost anybody would have known about the rebellion versus the Galactic Empire, specifically on Jakku after the remains of the whole star battle cruisers and starfighters and the whole Jedi thing. You would know in time of her life she probably would have discovered some Force sensitivity skills. I mean, she does have skills with climbing, scavenging, building her own speeder while living around fallen ships and stuff after a final battle of the Galactic Civil War. Beating thugs with a staff, which is a melee weapon like the lightsaber. Don't make the excuses. And also, most of all, piloting. She said she flown some ships but never left the planet. She never said she only flew a few times. She's not a Mary Sue. Sure, she is a little overpowered in some places, but that's not a Mary Sue. The movie never implied that she was the most powerful Force-sensitive user ever. They only imply she knew about the Force. Not that she's a massive master at it. Learn the difference and cut the shit with the terrible observations you have. Another point is, Kylo Ren wouldn't be beating on his wound in that specific spot if Chewbacca didn't shoot him there. Where else would Kylo Ren hit himself when he's pissed off? The head? Chewbacca shooting him was not just put there. You cannot use the excuse that he had time to get his act together. Would you feel scarred for life after you killed your own father? Do you really think 10 fucking minutes is enough to get his act together? You're an idiot. And then there's the fact that she apparently speaks Wookiee. Why wouldn't she be able to speak with other alien languages? She stayed on Jakku more than 10 years alone. She had to learn a lot of different skills to survive. It's a part of her mysterious past. And there's many alien languages alone to learn on Jakku. With her knowledge about the Millennium Falcon history, the history of the Force, the history of Han Solo, it shouldn't be a surprise that she's not really that good at piloting the Falcon. But like I said, she did state that she'd flown ships. She didn't even use the Force in the movie until she learned that Luke and the Jedi are real. Remember, key words, in the movie. She could have possibly used it off screen or her backstory too, but didn't know that that certain magic was the Force at the time. She definitely knew the stories about them, but it wasn't until the interrogation scene Rey used the Force. That's when the Force was awakening in her.
But Kylo Ren has been training for years. He should have kicked Rey's ass.
Yes, but where's the indication that Kylo Ren practices a lightsaber fight with someone? Here's an analogy. Lars Ulrich, the drummer of Metallica. We all know he's been the drummer of Metallica since they formed. And he was passionate for drumming in the 80s. And then sometime in the 21st century, he stopped practicing a lot. So if an amateur or rookie at heavy metal drumming is gonna do a face-off with him, would you really expect Lars, someone who lacks practice, to win against that challenger? I mean, his challenger would not play like Neil Peart and or Mike Portnoy, but he would still kick Lars Ulrich's ass. It's the same scenario with Kylo Ren versus Rey. Kylo Ren is pretty much Lars Ulrich in their shoes. Kylo Ren is in the shoes of Lars Ulrich, while Rey is in the shoes of any amateur just getting into drumming. I mean, if you Star Wars fans are at the same time Metallica fans and daily criticized Lars' drumming, you would definitely probably agree with me about the Lars analogy. But since The Force Awakens now exists and you're probably going to lie to yourselves and say that it's a terrible analogy. Also, if she said, I've flown one ship only once in my life, we can have a nice discussion about that. But that's not what she said, ladies and gentlemen. You can still drive only a few cars. I've driven only 3 cars in my life, by the way, and say you've driven cars for plenty of fucking years. That's probably more than likely the case for Rey. She's flown some ships several times, but never left the planet. Like, kind of like how I never left New England driving. I've left New England several times, but I wasn't in charge of the driving. Besides, she really sucks at flying the Falcon, like I already said. But I wouldn't co-pilot with her. It's like the equivalent of me first time driving a semi-truck or dump truck. If you really want to say that Falcon starts on the first turn of the key and flies perfectly, you must have not been watching the thing crash and smashed its way into the air, staled out, had its belly gun locked up, malfunctioned to a point where it was in danger of spewing poisonous gas, or the fact that Rey had to yank out parts of it with alarms blaring all over the place just to keep the hyperdrive from overloading. Yeah, she totally ran the Falcon perfectly. I know what I'm about to say is kind of nitpicking when I try to reason why Rey is not completely a Mary Sue, but if you truly think she knows everything, rewatch the Rathtar scene. She didn't know what Rathtars were. She said herself, what's a Rathtar, as I already recapped. If your guy's gonna say, we get it, you already said this stuff, then commit it to your fucking memory. Don't just say you get it and just forget about it and expect me to not say it anymore. Commit it to memory. I shouldn't have had to repeat it several times, but you guys don't listen! Also, think about all the times that Luke could have resembled a Gary Sue the same way you keep assuming Rey's a Mary Sue. Luke has no training and is able to get his ass kicked by primitive sand people, yet is able to be more of a match against the Imperial stormtroopers who probably had many years of military training. He's able to use the Force to destroy the Death Star, despite the fact that he has received little to no training how to wield it. The only thing Obi-Wan taught Luke was putting a blast shield over his head to deflect laser bolts. FYI, Luke never uses a lightsaber again in the film. He's only able to use it because a distorted voice told him to. Though, again, hasn't received any training in how to use it. He's able to survive a highly trained Imperial pilots, aka TIE fighters, where every one of his other rebel pilots got shot down, who again has received far greater pilot training than Luke. At least military pilot training. Why does no one bring up any of these facts? 2 reasons. Nostalgia and suspension of belief. Don't know why fanboys can't just apply the latter to Rey if they could for Luke in A New Hope. There you go. The Mary Sue point debunked. Again, you're judging Rey off one movie. The Last Jedi will more than likely show her limitations like Empire Strikes Back did for Luke. If you also think about it, Rey was also using the lightsaber in a clumsy way because she is more adapted to use a staff. Seriously, compare her fighting style to Anakin's style in Attack of the Clones and tell me who has more experience with that shit. Also, Maz Kanata telling Rey to close her eye and feel the Force, that's the same shit that happened in A New Hope. Realize it. That's what researching is all about. If you're gonna bitch about how Rey's a Mary Sue and how it's a remake of A New Hope, do your research and provide evidence. That would include watching every single Star Wars film, including paying attention to the dialogue and plot points. But fuck it, you haters never listen, so I don't care anymore. And now for the final Flack. It's not Star Wars. So you're telling me a story that has simple black and white storytelling, a gritty lifting universe, and fucking space adventure with emotionally engaging and fun characters is not Star Wars? Where did the value of the concept of lightsabers and the Force, like the prequels did? Where did that happen? Yeah, exactly. Nowhere. What a crime that Disney wanted a traditional and at the same time progressive gritty filmmaking about a space adventure and not stupid cartoon space politics or some dumb convoluted shit that had nothing to do with the concept and balance of Star Wars in the first place. Gee, it looks like... According to you dumbass fans, it looks like Disney should apologize for delivering us a great story, great executions, great characters to suffer, celebrate, and fear for, and root for, and connect with. Disney gave you guys what you want, and you still wind your asses off in your filled diapers. Guess Disney should apologize for giving us real, fun, relatable characters with different motivations, personalities, and investments, let alone tension. There isn't a single boring nor flat part in The Force Awakens. Damn, and the prequels were like 85% of that shit. I'm just guessing. Reasonable assumptions exist, by the way. I get it that J.J. Abrams didn't do a lot of original stuff. Not just with The Force Awakens, by the way. But if it's a movie that's gritty lifting and fun, and is good enough for me to invest in the characters, then I'm gonna love it with a passion. Again, The Force Awakens has its flaws that are fixable. Don't ignore the fact that Disney takes criticism seriously. Just like the original trilogy, it has a lot of heart, characters with emotions, characters that are relatable, the enthusiasm within the characters, the filmmaking that puts us on the edge of our seats, the type of movie that gives me chills and even brings tears to my eyes joyfully, a plot that is very easy to understand the black and white part of the story. I couldn't have done a better sequel. Well, I would have fixed a bunch of mistakes in the movie, but I wouldn't have done it better. Whether you like it or not, it feels like Star Wars. Star Wars is back for the first time since 1983. Anyway, that's my review and rant. Sorry if this was 2 hours long, I just had to get it all off my chest. If I were to give it a rating, I'd say, of course, a 10 out of 10. Masterpiece. Amazing way to bring back the franchise on track after wildly going downhill with the terrible prequel trilogy and terrible pointless special editions to add to the original trilogy. Thank you, Disney and J.J. Abrams, for making a Star Wars film that this time feels like Star Wars. While, yes, there were flaws here and there, what movie doesn't have its flaws anyway? It's not a perfect movie at all. No movie is perfect. I still enjoyed the hell out of this film, and I enjoy it every time I view. It gets better every time I watch it. Every movie has its flaws. Back to the Future trilogy has its flaws. I'll even link its mistakes in the description down below by another user. The first 2 Terminator movies has its flaws. The first 2 Alien movies has its flaws. Pixar movie has its flaws. Hell, even other amazing masterpieces like Pulp Fiction has its flaws. The flaws The Force Awakens had didn't stop me from enjoying the film. I had a lot of fun watching it. And like Hello Greedo said, that's what it's about, having fun. That's where the prequels failed and the original trilogy and The Force Awakens succeeded. Flaws in movies happen, but the best thing to do is make sure the positives in your film outweigh the bad, and the high points in The Force Awakens are so high that the low points are kind of meaningless to me. When you direct a movie, it's inevitable that you're going to make mistakes, but The Force Awakens outweighed its mistakes a lot, and I'm so glad Disney didn't fuck it up. They did not fuck up as bad people put it out to be. Star Wars is back with a vengeance, and The Force Awakens is what we needed. There's a difference between a flawed movie and a movie so poorly written and poorly made that it just gets mind-numbing and nauseating out of how god-awful and void it is from Star Wars. Rogue One, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and The Force Awakens are all, get this, flawed movies that are great and fun. Now, I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion. I really don't care if your opinion changes or not. I'm just trying to get this all off my chest and tell everyone my views on Star Wars today. I'm just trying to tell you guys why the negatives about The Force Awakens are completely useless to mourn about. And most of these flaws are fixable. Trying to reason with The Force Awakens haters and Star Wars fans in general is like trying to chew gum with your asshole. Impossible. Or like trying to go 200 miles per hour in a Fiat 500. Every time you debunk their stupidity about Star Wars, they always deviate to the whole true fan debate, which is absolute fucking nonsense. That's when you know they lose the argument against you. When they pull the true fan card out of their ass, they know they lost the argument because they have nothing to say to back up their arguments. It's all bullshit coming out of their mouths. They have diarrhea of their mouths. I can tell they're constipated because they're full of shit all the time. J.J. Abrams admitted to being more the Star Wars fan over a Trekkie. So obviously some heart and soul was put into this film. I mean, look at Lucas. He went from a visionary dude to the initial creative spark to being a corporate sellout who finished the prequels just for the sake of answering our fan questions, but albeit in an overall lazy way. J.J. Abrams, however, brought up a new generation of Star Wars that showed heart and soul and spoke to all fans. May the Force be with all of you. But wait, here's the other meat of the matter before I go. Just because they blow up another Death Star and some lifted elements like a droid being sought after it carries some environments that look the same, it really isn't the same plot. If all you're focusing on is the same, or what's the same rather, then of course you're going to come to the conclusion that there's nothing different. Why don't you try not just ignoring everything that is different? I don't remember Episode 4 climaxing a tense lightsaber battle between 3 characters in a snowy forest. I don't remember Episode 4 ending with the reveal of a long-lost character from the previous trilogy who had been the main plot driver of the movie. I don't remember Episode 4 opening with a massacre of a village that sets one of the main characters' arcs into motions. I don't remember Episode 4 having an entire sequence about Luke finding a long-lost lightsaber that gives him visions when he touches it. I don't remember a sequence in Episode 4 where the Cantina bar gets destroyed in an epic battle scene that leads to Luke getting taken in captive by Vader, then gets interrogated in a way that awakens the dormant Force sensitivity in him. I could go on, but there's many ways that The Force Awakens was different from Episode 4. That I really can't believe how convinced so many people are that it's just a rehash of Episode 4. I'm sick of people dismissing The Force Awakens as just a rehash of Episode 4. People who honestly believe that it is are lazy thinkers. You're not paying attention to the whole movie. You're just zeroing in on the elements that are the same and acting like it's all in the movie. The Starkiller base isn't even all that important to the climax. The climax is much more about Rey, Finn, and Kylo. And if you honestly think the Starkiller base was more unnecessary than a virgin birth, then I suggest you stop snorting that cocaine or drinking that gin. The death... Just give it all a rest now. And again, I don't remember Episode 4's climax being about anything other than blowing up the Death Star. So tell me again how The Force Awakens is just the same as Episode 4. I feel like you've not paid attention to The Force Awakens to realize that. Anyways, I think this is all I can say right here, because I really think Rogue One was a movie that relies far more on Episode 4's coattails than The Force Awakens does. And anyways, that's all I need to say. May the Force be with all of you who aren't asshats in the Star Wars trilogy. Space the fuck out.